Hello and welcome to the Recruit Rockstars podcast, where we focus on the people part of private equity and venture capital funded portfolio companies. I'm your host, Jeff Hyman, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by the VP of talent of a very prominent growth capital firm called Mainsail Partners. Now, I'll tell you briefly about Emily Azevedo, who is the VP of talent, and then she'll tell us a bit about the fund. And we're going to spend the next 15, 20 minutes really talking about some of the things that she's observed when it comes to talent, leadership, culture, recruiting, retention at the portfolio company level. She's worked with a whole bunch of them. And so prior to joining Mainsail, Emily was at Heidrick Struggles, my alma mater as well, one of the top executive search firms in the world, and she's specialized in technology and services companies. So it only made sense for her to join Mainsail Partners, which does prominently majority control investments of technology companies. But I'm going to let her flesh it out from there. And Emily's based in the Bay Area. How are you, Emily? Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, I'm great. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on the show. So why don't we just talk about Mainsail just for a couple minutes, and then we'll really talk about your role and kind of what you've observed across these portfolio companies. So as I understand it, Mainsail is really growth equity capital. How do you define that? What kind of companies do you tend to work with and invest in?
Yeah, so we invest in software, primarily software tech-enabled service companies. In terms of size, they're proven businesses that have grown to, call it EBITDA-positive or some proof of concept. The product is proven in the market. They've reached a critical point in their journey where really, and they're growing fast. These are high growth businesses, a lot of times EBITDA positive. And to fund the growth that they're enduring, they really need to decide to, whether to take on capital, debt, and the capital, whether that be venture or private equity, is where we come in. And, we like to partner with these companies and take them to the next level. We not only help fund the next stage of that journey, but we also help bring best practices from our operations team. So half of our firm today is actually dedicated to operations, whether that's operationalizing our best practices and playbooks, helping partner with them on building their strategy. There's a myriad of things that we do functionally to help them grow, not only just give them the capital they need to do that.
So you're working really closely with these companies, obviously. You're not just cutting a check and going away. You're actually adding a lot of value along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's our differentiator and value proposition.
And I was looking at the range of these companies. I mean, financial services, pest control, property management software, really across the board. Are these all SaaS companies, or are they all software companies at least?
They're software. I would say, it's the thread of the link between all of them is that we invest in software. There are a few different verticals that we have more experience in than others, and property management, payments, healthcare IT, security infrastructure software, supply chain software. So there are a couple of verticals where we have real deep experience and intend to gravitate, but the commonality there is that we invest in software.
Yep. And specifically scaling these things, really putting the pedal to the metal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. So let's really talk about the talent piece of this. So, it's a topic that doesn't get enough attention in my view, and I know you share that passion with me in terms of the people part of the business. What are some of the things that you've observed as common themes prior to these companies receiving a growth investment? So maybe they're 10, 20, 50, 100 people. They're just approaching profitability. What are some of the things that you've observed that they have not yet put in place or not yet mastered, that once they do, it can really make a significant impact on the business when it comes to the people part of the business?
Yeah, there are a couple things. So the first is the leadership team, and I guess I didn't. One of the pieces of our investment thesis is that these companies we invest in are bootstrapped, and what I mean by bootstrapped is that they've not taken on a certain amount of capital from friends and family, or mostly from outside institutional investors. And so because they're bootstrapped, they've not been afforded the opportunity to hire the right talent and to attract and pay the right people to do that. And so we, in providing capital to them, we enable them that opportunity, and then our team also helps them hire those leaders. We actually run the searches and help them. Yep. But they, that one thing I see is that they've really not built out that leadership team. It's very bare bone. They are EBITDA positive because it is, a founder or two founders and, one person running sales, and there's a lot of scrappiness that, it's amazing that they've grown to the level that they've achieved, and they've done so much with so little. And now it's our time to step in and help them really put in the foundation and building blocks to scale. But in order to do that, we need to pull apart some of the things that they're doing so great, and where we have one person playing 4 functional roles.
Wow.
We need to separate that into,
So part of the reason they're profitable or close to profitable is just because their burn rate and their team is so lean, right? They're not spending a ton on salaries.
Yeah, absolutely. And we bake that into our modeling as well. I mean, we know that's there is a bit of that happening, but part of, when you're growing and your retention rate is 110, 120%, you can afford to build that team out, and it'll pay for itself. And, there's a natural J curve to that investment.
Is there a common theme that you've seen, Emily, when it comes to where these businesses were traditionally most under-resourced functionally? Was it in sales or marketing or engineering? In any particular area that you're like, wow, relative to the size of this business and the potential, we don't have the right team, or we don't have enough of the right team?
Well, I would say most of the companies that, while we're looking at them and discussion pre-investment, most of them do not have a CFO or a VP of finance. They may have someone running, some outside agency or someone playing the controller role, maybe a bookkeeper, maybe they're on QuickBooks. Part of our role is also taking them off QuickBooks and onto something more sophisticated, like a NetSuite or something. But I would say finance is one and marketing is also another area that is functionally underinvested. And I think it's the last piece, and it's interesting. It's a really important. I mean, all the functions that marketing, sales, HR, talent. I hate to throw that one last. That's a very important function, but the ones that they always have. They always have someone running engineering or technology. They always have someone running point on sales, and sometimes the CEO or the founder plays a little bit of a sales role. Engineering, sales, and some sort of customer-centric role. And, it's usually unsophisticated. So we take it to a more proactive customer success. We tend to build that out as well.
And is that typically because the founder, CEO, was constrained on capital and just couldn't afford the right talent? Or did she or he not know what was out there in terms of the potential capital or human capital that was available, that if you upgraded or top graded from this person to that person, it could make a huge difference in the business?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. I mean, it really is, because it depends. Every business is a little different, and you have different, so there are companies that, just really and truly know that they know what they need to do,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
They just have been reluctant to do it. And there are other companies that think that the way that they've been running the business is the best way. And so we actually do a really good job of threading the needle and partnering with these businesses to show them through our expertise that, look, you don't need someone if it's supply chain software, you don't need someone from industry to run this function. So a lot of times I tend to evangelize that functionally, where you really just need a best in SaaS scaling leader that can help you grow, but not necessarily someone from the industry. So that's something that we tend to implement.
You mentioned a role that's often overlooked that I would love to get your thoughts on, Emily, which is the head of talent or head of HR, head of people, whatever you call it, within the portfolio company, within the software company. When you make these investments, and quite often, I guess these are control investments or sizable investments, do you typically see that they don't have a head of HR, or do they have a head of HR? And what might that person look like after the investment, and what kind of impact does that make?
It's really rare that these companies have a head of HR and or head of people or talent, whatever you want to call it. But it's definitely a function that's overlooked, and it's unfortunate because I think that these businesses need to be focused on talent strategy and building out the people, strategically incorporating that people strategy into the business strategy, and also paying attention to the culture. And I think there's it's never too early to start that. Some of the most successful businesses that we've invested in had invested in a head of people very early on. And, I really believe when you're doing that, when you're putting money behind that function early, and that you're getting the right person too, because it's one thing just to go hire someone, but you have to make sure it's the right person.
Yeah.
And so when you get the right person in that role, it's magical. I mean, it's incredible to see what that does for the business. It's like a magnet, because when you're recruiting people in, you're building your business brand, your employer brand. There's so much. It actually interplays cross-functionally throughout the whole organization.
Would you say it's the most overlooked executive role?
I think so. I think it is, because I think we tend to focus on the other functions, as other critical needs, and say, well, we really, yes, we need a head of HR, but why don't we go ahead and, but we really also need a head of sales. And let's hire the head of sales.
Or I can hire 2 more sales reps for that with that money or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we can justify other needs in the business, of course, with that money. But the one thing that I do is I always try to say, well, at minimum, will you let us hire someone who can help you recruit? Because that I can give you an ROI, and that I can tell you will pay itself back in dividends quickly, through recruiting fees or whatever. And then if you get someone who can be both a recruiter and straddle the line between HR strategy and recruiting, I think you've won the lottery, because you can you do a little bit of both. It's really hard to find someone who can be a generalist, can be in budget, and be very scrappy, tactical, and recruit, do everything for you. But
they're worth their weight in gold when you find them.
Yeah, and you hold on to them tight.
So if for the listener who's a CEO or a COO, let's say, of a growth stage company, in your mind, Emily, how many employees do you need before you can justify that? Say, you know what, you need a full-time powerhouse head of talent. Is it 50 employees, 100 employees, or more?
Yeah, I like to say 50. So that's interesting that you mentioned those two numbers, because the reality is that complexity of the HR function increases significantly when you hit 100. When you hit 50, you start having HR legal different reporting.
Over 50 employees, right? In some states.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's 50. Certain states require you to for different HR compliance reasons. You could always outsource that, but it's nice to have it all in house and have someone managing that. But when you hit 100, it's 100% necessary.
Yeah.
There's no, you're kind of behind. You're behind.
You're already too late if you have 100 people and you don't have a great head of talent. Is that?
I think so.
Right.
Yeah, I would. I feel comfortable saying that.
It's amazing. I see so many businesses at that size who they'll have kind of a junior level HR administrivia kind of person, but they don't have a strategic talent and leadership person, let alone a terrific recruiter.
Yeah, and by the way, it's hard to find these people. I mean, it's not easy because you're asking for someone to be strategic and not to be tactical.
Yeah.
But we want them to be tactical as well because we're scrappy and we're still growing and we're all still wearing multiple hats. But it's hard. It's really hard.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious, kind of other big mistakes that you see entrepreneurs, founders make, other than holding off too long on this hire or not having a great CFO, when it comes to the leadership and culture. So not putting certain people in place, but other things. What's another mistake that you see very commonly that holds back these companies?
Yeah, I think, it's, so, well, let's just say this. I think for a VC firm, for someone in my shoes, right, I always like to look at it like, if we can get the right leadership team in place, then, and the faster we do that, the faster we can, we can operationalize our best practices and playbooks and return capital to our LP investors.
Right.
How do we know we're getting the right leadership team? And that, and we've done look backs and studied results. And the thing is, getting the right CEO is critical. And so I don't know if this really answers your question, Jeff, but I think that when we're making investments, it's really important for everyone to be honest and to be, and to look forward and say, yes, we're going to, we'll partner with you. And we really want to make sure we're all together on this journey. But, if there's any hesitation, let us know and let us help you. And, if we can provide a coach for you and we can connect you into other CEOs in the portfolio. And so the faster we can help surround you with resources, that makes it that much easier. It is hard for the first time CEO, founder, entrepreneur, and I think that the CEO is a lonely role. And so sometimes, it's just making sure that you're constantly renewing that dialogue and making sure, we're building the right team. Because the last thing that you want to do is build a leadership team twice or multiple times. When as you're going through the hold period and that not only takes financial resources, but it just elongates the time for you to return that capital.
It's really a different set of competencies between the CEO that can lead a 10 or 20 million business and a $100 or $200 million business.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is. And there's no, and it's not a knock on anyone necessarily.
Of course not.
It's just it's very different to hire a professional CEO. And then once you get that CEO in place, it makes everything a lot, everything is easier when you look back. And the hires that you make under that CEO too, as well, tend to have there's a higher retention rate associated with that.
Absolutely. Well, Emily, you are clearly a secret weapon, if you will, of Mainsail Partners, because you have the opportunity to work across all these portfolio companies. I can't thank you enough for making the time. How can people learn more about Mainsail Partners or get in touch?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can go to just the website, mainsailpartners.com. You could always shoot me an email if you'd like to learn more. My email, would you like to give me would you like me to give it out here?
Please.
Emily at mainsailpartners.com. It's really easy. It's just my first name at mainsailpartners.com. Just shoot me a note and I can get you connected.
Terrific. Thank you so much for making the time, Emily.
Yeah, you're welcome, Jeff. Take care.